Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent goes into the lion's den on Face the Nation and dispels all the lies that they are spewing about Donald Trump's economy, because make no mistake about it, this is a rocket ship that is going nowhere but up in the coming years.
To Face the Nation, we have a lot of news to get to, and we begin with the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. Good to have you here.
Morning, Margaret.
Mr. Secretary, a lot of people are out there holiday shopping. Here is how the president described back in April what to expect from this season.
Maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally.
Was the president's prediction then correct?
Margaret, it's actually been a very strong holiday season, and we've seen across all the income cohorts thus far. And so there's nothing to say that they're $2 instead of $30.
The president was wrong to predict lower numbers of purchases and higher prices?
The economy has been better than we thought. We've had the 4% GDP growth in a couple of quarters. We're going to finish the year, despite the Schumer shutdown, with 3% real GDP growth.
Mm-hmm. Well, the maker of Tonka trucks, their CEO said it's going to cost $40 for their toys right now because of tariffs and inflation. It was $30 the year before that, 25. Prices in the toy space are accelerating, and people are feeling that.
Well, Margaret, inflation's a composite number, and it's roughly the same year over year. And if we were to look at all imported goods inflation is below the inflation number. You see the PCE number, which is about 2.9%. Imported goods inflation is about 1.8. It's the service economy that's generating inflation, which actually has nothing to do with tariffs.
But when we hear from, for example, the president, when he says that affordability is a con job by Democrats, that seems to just not be resonating with consumers that have been polled by CBS. 60% of Americans polled by this network told us President Trump makes prices and inflation sound better than they really are. And his approval rating on the economy is now down to 36% in our latest poll. On inflation, approval is even lower, at 32%. Don't you need to show that you feel the pain?
Well, Margaret, I think the president's frustrated by the media coverage of what's going on.
This is the polling of average Americans.
Yeah, but I think the average Americans, they are hearing a lot of it from media coverage. And I will tell you that the affordability has two components. There's inflation, and then there's real incomes. Real incomes are up about 1%. And what we're not going to do is say that Americans don't know what they're feeling. We've been working on it every day. I was on your show on March talking about affordability. We've made a lot of gains, but remember, we've got this embedded inflation from the Biden years where mainstream media, whether it's Greg Epp at the Wall Street Journal, toxic Paul Krugman at the New York Times, or former Vice Chair Alan Blinder, all said it was a vibe session. The American people don't know how good they have it. Now, Democrats created scarcity, whether it was in energy or overregulation, that we are now seeing this affordability problem. And I think next year we're going to move on to prosperity.
You do think there is an affordability problem?
Sorry?
You do believe there's
I think the Biden administration created a tariff.
No, but now we're nearly 12 months in. You said the president would own the economy at this point.
I said that the Biden administration created the worst inflation in 50 years, and maybe for working Americans, the worst inflation of all time. And we have pulled that number down. That Strategas Research does something called the Common Man Index. Under Biden, the accumulated inflation number, as measured by CPI, was about 20%. Their index showed 35. This year, for the first time, the Common Man Index is below the inflation index because the basket of goods for working Americans, food, gasoline, rent is coming down. So I wrote an essay March 12th, 2024, and it talked about the three I's: immigration, interest rates, and inflation. Mass unfettered immigration, depressed wages, caused housing prices to go up. President has closed the border. That is fixed. Interest rates have come down. The bond market just had the best year since 2020. And now we are working on inflation, and I expect inflation to roll down strongly next year.
Well, I mean, grocery prices are up nearly 3% compared to last September. The president seems to be acknowledging that grocery prices, or at least beef prices, are a challenge, because he put out this order just yesterday saying they're going to investigate corporate price gouging for high beef prices. Isn't suing the food companies the same thing the Biden administration did and it didn't really work?
Well,
How's this any different?
Nothing the Biden administration did worked.
So why are you doing it?
Because this isn't the same thing. If they had done this, if they'd done it properly, we'd be in a different spot. And like beef is one component. Thanksgiving turkey was down 16%.
Well, I know you are working on the trade front, and for American farmers and the prices that they are experiencing, that they're feeling a pinch about not having a market to sell into necessarily.
Well, not anymore.
Well, the agricultural secretary just said that the president's going to announce a bridge payment for farmers this week to give them short-term relief while you're working on these, finalizing these trade packages.
Well,
there are these low crop prices, and the soybeans in particular. I know you spoke with China's Vice Premier Friday. Are they going to speed purchasing up?
Well, they're not going to speed purchasing up. They're in the cadence that we agreed to. Soybean prices are up about 12 or 15% since the agreement with the Chinese. They are going to buy 12.5 million metric tons. But Margaret, I'm involved in the agricultural industry. I run a soybean farm, and I can tell you,
own one. You invest in it.
Sorry?
You own or invest in
and people in my
farm?
family go out and work on it. I actually just divested it this week as part of my ethics agreement, so I'm out of that business, but I probably know more about any Treasury Secretary than about agriculture since the 1800s. And I can tell you that what farmers need is certainty. And we have put that in place with this trade deal. 12.5 million metric tons this year, 25 million metric tons for the next 3 years for soybeans, also sorghum and lumber.
If a ship has been traveling in one direction for 4 years, you can't expect Donald Trump to turn that entire ship around and live the life of luxury. In about 10 months, Joe Biden absolutely crippled this economy and killed the working class in this nation. Inflation got to the point where it was 8-9% year over year CPI numbers. Donald Trump has brought that number down drastically. He brought down the price of gas. He brought down the price of eggs, groceries. His administration is working tirelessly to make sure life is cheaper for Americans nationwide. You don't have to decide between heating your house for the winter or getting groceries. This is what a lot of Americans had to deal with the last coming years, and how many critics and people in the mainstream media talked negatively about Donald Trump and his tariffs. What he is doing is revolutionary, bringing in hundreds of billions of dollars from these foreign countries, and the mainstream media wanted to tell Americans that this was inflationary and it was going to hurt the everyday Americans, when in reality that could not be further from the truth. What this man is trying to do is revolutionize the economy, and Scott Bessent is the man to make it happen. What he said is absolutely right. If you want to turn around the ship, you have to get the 3 I's in order: immigration, interest rates, inflation. You can't have a bunch of people coming in, crowding the housing market, and shooting the prices sky high. You can't have the Fed with these manufactured interest rates hurting the job market in this country. And thankfully, the interest rates are coming down, and inflation is also coming down. I don't know how anybody can view this in a negative light.
This year, because I heard you say this past week that some of the purchases wouldn't take place until February.
Well, for the season, so the crop year.
The season year.
Yep.
Okay. But why, if everything's fine, then why do farmers need a bridge payment from the agricultural department?
Sorry?
Why would farmers need a bridge payment from the agriculture department then?
Because these prices haven't come in, because the Chinese actually used our soybean farmers as pawns in the trade negotiations. And we are going to create this bridge because, again, agriculture is all about the future. You've got to start financing for planning next year when things will be very good.
I want to ask you about something that was announced this past week, the Trump accounts and building on this concept. So parents, as I understand, are going to be able to open these accounts via the Treasury for their kids. They're tax-deferred investment vehicles to U.S. citizen children under 18. You get $1,000 from the government for babies born between 2025 and 2028. So there are going to be restrictions on what the money can be used for: college tuition or their first house. Is that right?
No, it is. The federal government for children born in the period you just described is going to put $1,000 into these Trump accounts. It will be invested in a widely diversified low-cost index, and then it will be available
in the stock market,
in the stock market.
Exchange-traded fund or mutual fund.
So in essence, it is a trust fund. It is a piece of the American economy for every child, and they will be able to take it out when they're 18, or they can convert it to a more IRA-type program and keep it for their retirement.
So there won't be the restrictions I mentioned there about how they use the money?
No.
So a broadening of this past week with the Dell Foundation making a significant investment in the American children. So how is this going to work? Why structure it this way instead of a savings account, for example?
Well, a savings account just gets interest. This is the compounding power of the stock market. You know, as Warren Buffett says, don't bet against the American stock market, don't bet against the economy. And this is going to bring a whole group of new investors into the market. We're going to couple it with a big amount of financial literacy so that children understand what they own. The incredible gift by Michael and Susan Dell will be is a program that philanthropists, foundations can do to top up these accounts. And we are expecting, we're already, Treasury's already in discussions with foundations, with major philanthropists to top up these accounts. It could either be for all children, or you can specify it by zip code, a school district, or you can do what the Dells did and say that it won't apply to the zip codes of the top 20% of earners.
And more information is going to be coming out on how to use this and access it?
Yes, in the coming weeks we'll do that, and then the official kickoff will be July 5th.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about this massive fraud out in Minnesota in the state welfare program. Has been under federal investigation since all the way back in 2022. The president told you, though, this week to look into Somalis who, quote, ripped off that state for billions of dollars. He said they contribute nothing. What exactly are you investigating?
Well, Margaret, to be clear, the initial fraud that was discovered by the IRS, for which I'm the acting commissioner, is discovered by IRS Criminal Investigations Unit. This was not an endogenous thing that the state of Minnesota decided we had to go in and clean up the mess for them, and this is part of the continued cleanup. A lot of money has been transferred from the individuals who committed this fraud, including those who donated to the governor, donated to Representative Omar, and donated to A.G. Ellison. But they've been transferred to something called MBSs. And those are...
Mortgage-backed security? What do you mean?
Sorry?
Transferred to what?
These are money, the Bureau services, and they are wire transfer organizations that are outside the regulated banking system. And that money has gone overseas. And we are tracking that both to the Middle East and to Somalia to see what the uses of that have been.
Okay, but you have no evidence of that money being used to fuel terrorism at this point, which is what some conservative writers are alleging.
That's why it's an investigation. We started it last week. We'll see where it goes. But I can tell you that it's terrible. Representative Omar tried to downplay it. Said, "Oh, it was very it was very tough to know how this money should be used." Yeah. She was gaslighting the American people.
Well, we'll talk to her.
Yeah, but when you come to this country, you got to learn which side of the road to drive on. You got to learn to stop at stop signs, and you got to learn not to defraud the American people.
Well, there are plenty of criminal behavior from communities well beyond the immigrant community.
I don't see what the problem is whatsoever. They don't know where the money went. What is so bad about finding out what the money was actually used for, and if there was fraud involved, then you prosecute it to the highest degree. I think that's what you have to do. This is how you eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. If you continue to allow this to perpetuate and continue to happen time and time again, then you're in an everlasting loop, and it will continue to happening until the end of time. But if you ask me, I think some representatives in Minnesota know that fraud is involved and they're just trying to delay this investigation. But in regards to the Trump accounts, I don't think people realize how monumental that this is going to be. A large swath of the population is financially illiterate. Just look at the Black Friday shopping numbers. 90% of people who shops use financing. People are using financing to buy a burrito using DoorDash nowadays. People need to know the value of compound interest. And the best way to teach them that is to show that to them directly. That's exactly what this Trump account is doing. Because let's just say you don't spend money shopping, you just hold cash, you hold dollars. You are going to continually lose value each and every year because inflation will never go away in this country. I don't care who is president. I love Donald Trump, but he's not going to get inflation at 0%. So if you're holding something that loses value each and every year, essentially a melting ice cube, how do you expect to grow long-term wealth? That's where this Trump account comes in. If you invest into the S&P 500 in a very diversified account, you're going to see 6-7% gains year after year annualized. And I saw a figure that said if you had let the $1,000 compound until the age of 35, you're going to have $800,000 in your account. Just through the compound interest, not even if you invest another dime on your own. This is where Americans are going to wake up and say, oh my gosh, they're going to have a say in the system. They're going to love capitalism. They're not going to hate the country. They're not going to want socialist behaviors. And I think that's where we went wrong in this country, because so many people have no idea how the financial system works. They just want to overthrow the entire system and move to socialism because they don't have a piece of the pie. So I really do believe this is the most genius thing that Donald Trump has done ever since taking power this second term, because millions of Americans nationwide are going to open their eyes to what's possible. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this down below. Do you think that that was a good idea by Trump, or do you think it's going to lead to more inflation? What are your thoughts on this? I'd love to hear that. And if you enjoyed, make sure to smash like, comment, subscribe, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Till next time.